Welcome back to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you about reality. Are you running away from reality if you have your child at home instead of in a public school or even a private school? You're the one schooling them. In the wake of recent tragic school shootings, more and more anxious parents are contemplating homeschooling to protect their children. A public school teacher interviewed by a news outlet disagreed with the idea of homeschooling, saying, "Resorting to homeschooling is teaching your children to run from reality." So, is compulsory mass schooling what we would call reality? I don't think so. It isn't working. What's happening? What's happening is the modern educational philosophy segregates children according to age. In the school that I ran, it was an ungraded system. Age is not the identifier. But in our system, you're 10 years old, you're going to be in third grade. That's all there is to it. The classroom is increasingly restrictive, test-driven, laboratory type, where children are forced by law to be, unless a parent or legal guardian liberates them. And you have to ask yourself, is that freedom? Is that liberty? Young people are spending increasingly more time in what is becoming a more coercive reality than ever before. For young children ages 6 to 8 years of age, schooling increased from an average of 5 hours a day in 1981 to an average of 7 hours a day by 2002. I wonder how much of that is driven by the fact there's nobody at home to receive them. They might as well just stay in school. According to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 42% of our teenagers were enrolled in school during July of 2016, compared with only 10% enrolled in July 1985. We're talking summer school. 42% versus 10%. This extended time in school and school-like activities is actually separating them from the real world in which children previously came of age. As Business Insider is reporting, quote, almost 60% of teens in 1979 had a job. In 2015, that number had dropped to 34%. Spending more time in the contrived reality of forced schooling and less time in authentic, multi-age, productive communities may be changing the developmental process. We're talking about home and family and extended family and neighborhoods. Suicidal thoughts and attempts by young people have been increasing over the last 10 years. New findings from researchers at Vanderbilt University show a disturbing correlation between time in school and this new reality. Whereas most adults see suicide spikes in July and August, most of our kids are committing suicide in the summer. I take that back. They used to. Now they're moving out of summer and doing it during the school year. The strongest period is during school year. Boston College psychology professor Dr. Peter Gray believes that increasingly oppressive schooling is leading to serious psychological damage in some children. Increasingly oppressive schooling. What is that? He writes on his blog at Psychology Today, noting the statistical rise in stress from schooling and homework, a time factor greater than what their parents spend in full-time jobs, He points out that schooling is often more burdensome and stress-inducing than that of a typical adult job. I'm not around school-age children a lot, but the ones that I have been around, I don't see them overworked with homework. I don't know. A century ago, he writes, we came to the conclusion that full-time child labor was child abuse, so we outlawed it. But now school is the equivalent of full-time child labor. The increased time, the tedium, the stress of schooling is bringing many kids to the breaking point or beyond, and more people are becoming aware of that. He says it can no longer be believed that schooling is a benign experience for children. The evidence is that it induces pathology. Recent school shootings may be an extreme example of this rising school-induced pathology. How's that? Now, my opinion is, and we all saw last week, or a week or more ago, the Midwest schools that have cut in-school hours by adding a third day off each week. But here we read how that experts now believe time in school is actually inversely profitable. Can't they get together? What's the balance? Is it reasonable to spend 6 hours a day in school? Out of that 6 hours, there's only 4.5 hours of actual classroom instruction. You got lunch, you got gym, opening exercises if they still do that, passing from class to class, auditorium time, and a host of extra things that cut into that 6 hours. So 4 or 5 40-minute instruction periods a day doesn't seem overwhelming to me, even if it's 50 minutes. What's overwhelming is the social dynamic. Schools are now training children to be politically correct, to be socially sensitive, racially sensitive, even as they seek to break down those barriers. Barriers they emphasize, the emphasis of which defeats the purpose, which creates a division and maybe hence the tension. Kids are bringing all sorts of distractive devices to school. Kids are bringing all sorts of social, political philosophies to school. And schools are having to work through all this while trying to educate. And it doesn't allow for teachers who are activists for a lot of the junk that's in our society, forcing children to write articles or to do projects that relate around some of these crazy social structures. And state schools are populated by teachers trained in politically, socially correct institutions, meaning that they are largely out of touch with reality, especially when it comes to relationships, politics, and whatever feelings a student may have. The system is out of control. When did we start paying psychologists to sit in school all day? Every building. I don't know. It was a while ago. But we have school psychologists. In my day, we had teachers with authority. You acted up, you're out. There was a time when the teacher walked by with a ruler and swat your hand when you had it where it ought not belong. Oh, you can't do that. In my day, a teacher would run down, or walk by you, and you'd be acting out. She'd grab you by your ear, and she'd twist it till you stopped. You can't do that anymore. The system is out of control, largely because it's trying to be all things to all students. It's trying to be that change agent instead of the educational institution it was designed to be. And it's being run from Washington, D.C. It's being run from your state houses. It's being run from places other than your community. They're telling you what these kids are supposed to learn and at what rate and in what manner. Why does it matter to a teacher what a child thinks about abortion? Why is abortion even discussed in school? It's got no place in school. We're here to learn how to read, write, and think, not be socially correct. You want to be socially correct? Go home. If the school is indoctrinating children with their moral and social philosophy, they could be creating problems for that child at home. How does that help? Oh, and after 50 years of doing this, the parents are sufficiently indoctrinated to accept all this junk as normal. And they are convinced the school exists to release them from the burning burden of having to teach their children anything. Let me give you 5 reasons that such a system appeals so well to younger children. Number 1, they come from broken homes. There's a shattered family unit. There's only one parent at home. It's usually mom. This is a situation that significantly increases the chances of depression and anxiety in children, according to experts. We know it creates an unbalanced social structure. Are we surprised when young people raised in this environment are seeking a philosophy of life that offers them security? Secondly, there is the education itself. As we and others have warned, the education received in many public schools and even private schools intellectually forms students to view the world through a prism that makes socialism appealing. It makes sense to them. For instance, when teaching U.S. history, the themes emphasized the most are usually the progressive era and its fight against capitalism, as well as the importance of pursuing equality, starting with the Declaration of Independence. You do know U.S. history courses start with Reconstruction now. That's 1870. Forget the founders, forget the establishment of, or the indoctrination into the basic core issues that this country was rooted in. Add to the indoctrination that limits the history or the civics classes. We're not allowed to pursue everything. This is structure this. The examples that abound of socialist-friendly school cultures and teaching lessons that filter through almost every subject in the school. Thirdly, there's the demise of Christianity. We used to say the Lord's Prayer every morning in school. Our teacher read to us from the Bible every day. In America, Christianity has traditionally been one of the driving forces that shaped our culture. It gave us a sense of purpose in life, helped us govern our passions, united us, and even gave us meaning in suffering. And all that has largely been washed away. And it has left a void in many a young American's life. These days, too many of us want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, but not something that asks too much. Rather, we want something that serves us. Fourthly, there's creative destruction. Capitalism as a concept is scary for a lot of people. When will the next recession hit? Will someone make a product that makes my business obsolete? What happens if I lose my job? How will I pay my school loans and afford a house? And on the worries go. A free society and economy require people who have the self-assuredness, self-control, and strength of will to fend for themselves. Once a free society gives itself over to desires for security, be prepared for freedom to diminish. That's exactly what happened, isn't it? Fifthly, there's decadence built right in. We have today more material wealth than at any point in human history, more than any other society known to mankind. Most Americans have grown up never wanting for the basics. Our grocery stores are always stocked. The latest technology is always available. We can communicate across vast distances. The car and airplane are commonplace, and we rarely have to sacrifice. I know there are poor people among us who don't have all of these benefits, but many of those poor people have a $400 or $800 cell phone. Even the poor in America have indoor plumbing, air conditioning, television, radios, cell phones, cars, food, computer, nice clothes. We are utterly blind to how wealthy we really are as a society and how wealth affects us. Furthermore, we spend our time often watching shows and advertisements that reinforce the belief that we can and should consume whatever we want. If we don't have the money for it, there's always somebody who will lend us the money to get what we need right now, because everything is on demand. Gotta have it. We've largely forgotten the hard work and sacrifice of previous generations that made it possible. We can't fathom a different way of life, and so our lives are marked by self-indulgence, by decadence and corrupt thinking. The very success of capitalism may be its undoing. If you generally agree with these 5 items, that they are some of the major root causes behind the growing socialist inclination in America, then there is something else that must be addressed. Of this list, there is only one subject that can be solved to some degree via a political solution. It's education. The rest of the issues are fundamentally cultural problems. And as we have always argued, culture is upstream from politics. If you want to understand what will likely happen politically in 10 years, simply look at the cultural beliefs of the younger Americans and how they live their lives. The politics and the policy will eventually conform. It is for that reason alone that the raising and education of children is so important. How children are formed emotionally, intellectually, socially will be the biggest determiner of a country's future. This is why family is so important. This is why traditional values are so important. And this is why the Bible is so important. As we continue, next up, we're going to see how science is catching up with the Bible. Got a new scientific study indicating that the Bible has been right all along and that evolutionary theory is not. You're going to like this one. Stay with us.